What's up, YouTube? It's Nerdy, and welcome back to the Transmissions Draft League. Today I am bringing you the recap for week number 1. We had a very awesome start to the beginning of the season. Very high-powered, high-action first week, and a lot of really good matchups around the league. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into it. Week 1 had a bunch of divisional matchups, and of course I did make some predictions. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get through those. First up, we had the Season 4 Sweepers versus the Bit Breakers. This was a really fun 3-game set. In that first game, the Bit Breakers actually ended up using Bulk to win the game, basically. The Sweepers did not have enough gas to get through the Bit Breakers, and through some clever switching, and of course the bulk of Amoonguss and Cresselia, the Bit Breakers did end up winning that first game. However, it was the power of Tornadus and Basque Legion that ended up turning the tides in Game 2 to take us to a Game 3, and in Game 3 it was once again Basque Legion and Iron Hands this time, putting in a lot of work to win the game. A little bit of luck involved in this, of course. There was a crit going one way and then a freeze going the other way, so it did end up balancing out in my opinion. But you know, that's the game we play. That's Pokemon, so it does end up happening. I also did end up getting the prediction wrong for this week. I did think that the Bit Breakers were going to win this just off of the strength of a Pokemon like Ursaluna. However, the upset for the Sweepers is absolutely huge for their playoff standing, so they are looking good for the playoffs. Hopefully they can keep that up in week 2. Next up, we had my match, which by the time that this video is released, you hopefully have been able to see the game from my perspective, but we did end up winning that match 2-0, which obviously is an absolutely massive win for you Manchester Bewears. The LA Charge Beams, in my opinion, were a little bit overrated by the rest of the field in terms of power level. However, they are still a very strong team and definitely one of our rivals for the division. So taking them out early and in a very convincing match does mean that we are in a great spot for playoffs, and we should probably be in the driver's seat for those playoff standings. Of course, we still have a couple of tough matchups coming up here. But if we continue this same strong momentum, we should hopefully be in a good spot thanks to a strong start. Next up, we had the 10-star team versus the Dream Park Duo Blades. And this was a very one-sided match, arguably the most one-sided game, in my opinion. The 10-star team kind of just was able to do whatever they wanted to. Goldengo and Tornadus were kind of the only two Pokemon that were necessary, although both Electabuzz and Incineroar did show up. And in my opinion, this is kind of like the baseline that we can expect from the 10-star team. Of course, Goldengo is very strong, Tornadus also very strong, and then Incineroar and Electabuzz are really good support. No Azumarill this time around, so something to look for in future weeks. But yeah, I think that this is kind of a decent first look, although not too many creative sets here. It was really all just standard for 10-star. So we'll see what happens going forward. And as for the Dual Blades, really just kind of got Pokemon diffed at this point. They had some interesting sets, including a Baton Pass, Calm Mind for Rigorath to try and set up Hatterini. I thought that was an interesting set, but it also kind of revealed to me that Hatterini really needs that Psychic Terrain in order to get the stuff done that it wants to. I think if the Dual Blades do want to try to be a little bit more competitive going forward, that's something that they could lean into, potentially trading something like for Rigorath for something like a Ndidi Male. But yeah, that is what we had for the Dark Division. Looking towards the Light Division, we had the Booming Swampers versus the New York Poke Rangers. Another very one-sided match here, where the Poke Rangers did end up getting the win. Um, Surprisingly, off of the strength of both Rhyperior and Oricorio, although, of course, Fluttermane and Staraptor did pull quite a bit of weight there, especially Staraptor. Those very powerful Brave Bursts did come in clutch. But yeah, very one-sided game. The Booming Swampers did, in my opinion, actually make really good use of a couple of 4-point Pokemon. But again, this was kind of just a situation where they got Pokemon diffed, where their 4-pointers, along with Okidoki, were able to put a decent dent in the lower tiers that Adelov was bringing. But eventually, when the big guns came out, the Booming Swampers had no chance of keeping up. And so hopefully they make use of their own big guns going forward to kind of close the gap with some teams. I think that they definitely still have a lot left in the tank. Next up, we had the Cretaceous Draco Meteors versus the Calgary Flareons. In my opinion, not so one-sided 2-0 victory for Dale there. It was one-sided in that it was a 2-0. However, I definitely think that of the teams to lose 2-0, Celadon definitely showed the most life. And for that reason, I'd say that Celadon is probably still in a pretty good position going forward. I like the team, and I think that Celadon can definitely make something happen with it. It's a very tough start of the schedule, and of course, when you go against Dale, Ada, and then JKG 3 weeks in a row, that is really a tough start to the season. But hopefully, Celadon can turn it around. And in my opinion, if any one of those weeks ends up in a win, you're definitely looking good for playoffs, as your second half of the season is a lot easier than the start to the season. So yeah, hopefully good luck to Celadon. Still in a tough spot, but showed a lot of life. And then finally, we had the Sunset Rose Meowsticks beating the Infernal Infernapes in a 3-game set. This was very similar to the Sweepers versus Bitbreakers, where Infernapes had a very dominant first game, and then a little bit of chicanery in the final 2 games for Sunset Rose Meowsticks to finally pull it out. In my opinion, Dragonite put in a lot of work alongside Politoed. And I definitely think there was a couple of missteps in this match, which should give fans of Bigbot and the Infernal Infernapes a big amount of hope going into the future weeks. If you lose to missteps, that's definitely fixable. But if you're losing because your team isn't strong enough, that is a lot harder to fix. So I think that there is a lot to be excited for there. That being said, we are 4-2 after 1 week of predictions. So we have 4 correct guesses and 2 incorrect guesses. The 2 games that I got incorrect were in my opinion, the upsets with the Meowsticks and the Sweepers. Other than that, we did get everything correct. Looking forward to week 2, we have another suite of really fun games. Looking at the Dark Division, of course, we have my match versus the 10-star team, where, of course, we are going to be taking ourselves, I think that this should be an interesting matchup, but that being said, it does mean that we are kind of under the spotlight, in my opinion, with a very dominant week 1 match versus a high-powered team. This is kind of where we either solidify as a top team or we make the water even more muddy. But yeah, I'm going to be favoring myself for that. You always got to take yourself to win, even if it's a tough matchup. If you're not believing in yourself to win, why even show up to the game? Next up, we have the Dream Park Duo Blades, and they are going against the Season 4 Sweepers. I'm going to take the Sweepers here. They had a really nice first week, and in my opinion, this is a much easier matchup for them. The Duo Blades are a okay team, and I think that the matchup is not terrible versus the Sweepers. But in my opinion, the Sweepers had a really rough matchup into the Bit Breakers, and they managed to pull it out. So this should definitely be a position where the Sweepers should be favored. And lastly, for the Dark Division, we have the Charge Beams versus the Bit Breakers. This is a tough one because I think both of these teams had a really rough loss in Week 1. And that being said, I still think that one of these teams is not clearly better, but definitely better in that the Bit Breakers are solely Trick Room reliant. The Charge Beams are not. However, the Bit Breakers cannot set up Trick Room against the Charge Beams because they have Torkoal, and the Charge Beams get to do whatever they want speed control wise. Similar to my match versus the Charge Beams, we had all of the speed control and the Charge Beams had none. So when that relationship is flipped on its head, I think Charge Beams should be favored, and I'm going to take them to win in Week 2. Looking towards the Light Division, we have the New York Poke Rangers versus the Calgary Flareons. As much as I want to favor Saladon here, because I think that this is a spot where he's kind of got to get a win, otherwise it's going to be looking a little rough for the second half of the season. I do think that Adalov is going to get the win here. The Poke Rangers have a really solid team, and a pretty solid matchup into the Flareons as well. There are, of course, some things that can change the math and muddy the water. I'm looking at Moltres Galar in particular. So this should be a fun match, but I think that experience will win out. And I do think that these teams are pretty even in power level, so this could go either way, but I am going to favor the Poke Rangers here. Next up, we have the Booming Swampers versus Infernal Infernapes. I am going to lean the Infernapes here. I think that despite a very rough Week 1 game, the Infernapes have a good team, and they understand where the misstep was, and I think they can definitely bounce back. The truth is that I think that this team has a lot more to give, and so do the Swamperts. The problem is that the Swamperts only have like star power, and the Infernapes have star power and the ability to be a little bit more cohesive. So I'm going to favor them in this match. And then finally, we have the Sunset Rose Meowstics versus the Cretaceous Draco Meteors. This is, in my opinion, a trap game for the Draco Meteors. Just like how the Infernapes lost to the Meowstics in Week 1. I think the Meowstics can play this a couple of different ways. The problem is there is, in my opinion, almost no way that the Meowstics can keep up with the Draco Meteors damage-wise, and so they have to be favoring a Perish Trap angle to try and extend the game and win using Perish Trap. That being said, if there is a team that can just break through that just on sheer power alone, it is going to be the Draco Meteors. So I am going to favor them here, but I am going to say that this is a potential trap game where I don't think that anybody should be comfortable taking any team in this position. I think this is probably one of the 50-50 matchups. So excited to see how that goes. Good luck to everybody for Week 2. But before we go, let's go ahead and take a look at the stats. We had a few very big performers from Week 1. In the Meowstics game, of course, both Politoed and Dragonite had a big game, and then Primarina, absolute game changer for the Infernapes. Definitely was the most impactful Pokemon for them in this set, and could have definitely changed the tides had there been a little bit more going in their favor. As we talked about, Goldengo and Staraptor were game changers in both of those sweeps. Hariyama, of course, was a game changer in our sweep. It really put on a ton of pressure and did not allow JKG to do just about anything. And then, like I said, Basculegion F and Torrentee were super impactful, as well as Iron Hins in that third game. But we also see that Wellspring, Tornadus, and Moltres Galar were all super impactful Pokemon. Looking a little bit further down, there are a couple of Pokemon that we don't expect to be down this low. I'm looking at particularly Ursaluna Blood Moon, but we also have Pokemon like Iron Crown and Archiludon there as well as Raging Bolt. All of these Pokemon probably will move their way up in the rankings going forward, but as of now, it looks a little odd to see them this far down here. But yeah, a lot of very great performing Pokemon and a lot of low tiers actually showing up. So hopefully we continue to see teams using some of those like more varied strengths rather than just leaning on the best Pokemon they have available. Here are the standings for the moment. Of course, with only 1 week, a team either wins or loses, and that puts them either in the top 3 or the bottom 3. So your top 3 teams are currently in the lead for the playoffs. Your bottom 3 teams are looking on the outside in. And yeah, there is definitely a lot of games to be played here, so don't get discouraged just yet. There is a lot of Pokemon left to be played, and hopefully you are excited for it, and hopefully you continue to cheer on your Manchester Bewears, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.